already, so they can do nothing with it for another week.
Let me open the slides.
Hi. Okay. I think if they're wrong, but we'll just say that. We'll just explain it. So what we're going to do, actually, we're going to do four of his slides, and then we're going to come to your slides. Okay, so he's going to do four slides, high level, and then you, and then we'll have a conversation. We're just going to agenda bash that at the beginning. Is that okay with you? Is that okay with you? Okay. So he's going to do 5 of his slides, and then we're going to go to your whole deck, and then we'll come back to the conversation with some of the other slides. Yeah, let's start. Hello? 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 This doesn't work. It does work. Oh. I don't understand how the button works. That's my problem. You don't push the button to talk. You unpush the button. You push the button to mute. Hello, welcome. Oh, Jeff Houston has left us. I thought we were going to get turned into become the next data center review. He was in the back there. Anyway, I was sort of, interesting difference. Welcome to ASDF. I'm Michael. This is Lorenzo. I think this is your first time chairing at a physical meeting. Welcome. So Lorenzo is our new chair. Thanks to our outgoing chair, Nicholas, who is amazingly here and not buried in other work, apparently. So thank you for all for being here. We have how many people remote? About 10 maybe, I think. I'm going to guess. A few remote, Elliot. So we're going to talk primarily about digital twin today, and that stuff. I know we've done a lot of work on NIPSI, and we're going to come back to that at the end. So let me see here. What do you join the Meet Echo? We got a little link here I don't know about, but me.t.co. Meet Echo.
That's how you pronounce it.
Oh, that's how you pronounce it. Okay.
Apparently.
Okay. I thought that was a shortened URL or something like that. It was like, cool. You have an interesting URL shortener that I don't have. Okay. We're here. If you are on site, use one of the tools. Please make sure your microphone and speakers are muted so we don't get feedback. If you're remote, we highly recommend headphones. Get in the queue. Please use the queue mechanism. The icons on the agenda will get you to the right place. And please put your hand up. Use the hand tool, the Q tool, if you're here in the room, and if you're not, so we can figure it out. If you have never used Mute Echo, just know that you control the unmuting, not us. And so, in fact, you can have an argument if you like with other people without ignoring the queue, but we ask you to be respectful and all that stuff. We have, I think, another note-taking volunteer already. That's good. I will also be taking notes. And please join us on the HedgeDoc page. And here's the agenda. Do you want to speak about how we're doing that?
Yeah, so we'll do a brief introduction about the working group's documents, and then there's been a change. We didn't refresh, but it's fine. So Karsten will briefly present a few non-affordance slides to spark discussion later. Then we go on with the digital twin draft, and then non-affordance draft, and then Carsten is back with more details and discussion on instance information, and then we discuss the updates about NIPSI and the progress during the hackathon, and then we'll have a very small discussion about what we do with the ASDF relations, and then we end the meeting by scheduling for the next virtual interim meetings and maybe a small call for action about finding more authors. So a discussion on how to involve more people in the working group, and then any other business if time allows.
Any other changes to the agenda? Any last minute desperate things? Okay, thanks. Thank you, Ori, for closing the door.
Yeah, the note well apply. I leave 5 seconds to check it out, and there are links to documents that go more deep into the topic. But yeah, note well apply here. And also we have the IETF Code of Conduct Guidelines, RFC 7154. 5 seconds to go through it.
But be nice to each other.
Yeah, just be nice. That is the summary. Yeah, and here the updates on the working groups. So I divided in 4 categories according to their status on the data tracker. So on the working group drafts that are active, we have SDF. It actually is at the version 24 now. It's in the ISG queue. And then we got a late, so RFC editor.
Yep.
Yes.
It's all approved. We just have
it's all
one
approved.
edit.
Yeah. And then late night update from NIPSI version 10 yesterday and SDF type links. And then we have 2 candidates draft for working group adoption, Digital Twin and SDF Compact. And then we have another call for adoption issued by the working group for the SDF mapping draft. And then we have 3 active individual drafts, which are the instance information that we discussed today. And we have the SDF non-affordances and ASDF relations. And in the legend, you see which one are addressed today in the agenda and the one that have been recently updated. So this was my short introduction. So we can proceed with Carsten.
I think that's backwards. Those are call for adoption issued by working group and candidates working group adoption. I think those 2 titles are swapped, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. There. Yeah, you're gonna. Yeah. You have to stop sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, good morning. So I asked for presenting my first 5 slides and
Just
then
stop
maybe
sharing.
another slide for structuring the discussion before we go into the details. And I'm wearing my screen glasses, so I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, we can't seem to stop sharing these slides.
Well, they're great slides, so
I know,
why
but-
would you stop sharing them?
But because this is the updates.
Yeah, so go on the slides. Who is controlling them?
That's the point. We're not clear.
Slide clicker.
The slide-
You have to.
We have to stop the slide clicker. That was the point.
Yeah.
That was the part we didn't know. Now you can stop sharing. And
Now we have them.
pull it
Yes.
on the floor. Oh, well.
So let's not
I can pull that.
stumble over
You stopped it. You started already.
ice cubes.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, so this side of the chair table is kind of dangerous. Anyway, so I wanted to quickly maybe structure the discussion, and there is a draft that is underlying this, which has been heavily being worked on, but I'm not really that interested in the draft for the first 5 minutes. But I want to show one piece of code out of that draft, which is a way to represent an instance. And we have to understand what that actually means. So when I started working on the 1DM work in 2018, 2019, this was very interesting because they had a really nice idea how to do things. But they didn't really have an architecture. And one of my jobs was to actually extract the architecture. And I think I'm in that weird job again, that we have to find out what is actually the architecture that can be used to do these things. So what could be instance information? This could be information, for instance, about the identity of a thing, maybe some supplementary information that is on a digital twin or an asset management system, some purpose in life information. A device usually has a limited understanding of its purpose in life, but there are other components that know more closely what that means. So I'm a temperature sensor, I'm giving you a temperature, but I don't know that I'm in hotel room 462. That somebody else knows that. And there may be information about the physical side. So for instance, where is that thing actually physically located? What are the manual electrical settings on the device? Again, the device may not know how it is wired into the existing system. So is it sensing the temperature of the refrigerator or of the room? The device may not know. So this is all information that we have to manage, and we have used different names for this, non-affordance and so on. And I'm just trying to be a little bit more general before we decide on terms like non-affordance, off-device. These are all interesting properties, but I think the fun part is there is some instance information that goes beyond what we have standardized in SDF today. And particularly what's new is in SDF, we don't have a way to actually interchange data. And you have to let that sink in for a while. We describe the interactions that a device can do, but we leave it to the ecosystems to realize these interactions with actual messages. And given that we are now opening up the situation to include not that just the device, but other sources and destinations of information about the device, we may get into a situation where we actually want to realize those data into messages. So it's no longer just about describing interaction, it's about data in flight. And that's new. And this means that the existing mechanisms we have are not sufficient, but they sure help. And we have to make sure that they work well together. So we have this protocol mapping thing, which you, for instance, also see in NIPSI, which says how to map the abstract message into something that actually can be sent in the ecosystem. And maybe we have other ecosystem-specific information, and somehow the device also has a SCIM model and representation in SCIM and so on. So the draft I'm not talking about right now defines several kinds of such messages, proof shots, which are kind of overviews of what's going on the device, event history, which is a way to look at individual events, constructors, which are ways to initialize instances, and then a proof shot delta as an efficient way to get an update of what's going on there. So these are really shots in the dark. They may not be exactly what you want, but we could try to phrase things in this. But before that, we actually have to get the architecture. And that's my main point here. What do we standardize for this? First of all, we need an instance representation format, and we need to be very aware that this is not a model, but an instance. So that's new to the SDF architecture. It's not hard to cobble up something, but do we know what the requirements are? I think we have to work on the requirements of those, and we have 3 drafts now that provide input to that. So I think we can have a very interesting discussion. Now, those instances, of course, are not freestanding. They should comply to models. And we can model the contents of these instance representation format instances in English, sure, but that's not really very conducive to going forward. or we could say, okay, we want to do this model-based, so we want to provide models about instance information. And this, I think this is so logical that some of us may not be noticing that this is actually a new thing. So we could leave all these models to ecosystems, like we have left protocol bindings to ecosystems. We can't, because we don't have a protocol for SDF, NIPSI notwithstanding. That would be the 1DM way. So we just sit there and wait for ecosystems to put in models. There is no SDF temperature sensor. There is a number of 1DM temperature sensors. So that's, of course, something that I'm very familiar with and that I would naturally tend to. But let's talk about this and discuss it. Because maybe the ecosystems that actually care about instance information are not the same that have created these big data models like the Zigbee cluster library and all the other data models that are out there. So maybe it would not be wrong to actually kickstart the process of getting ecosystems to describe their instance information by pre-standardizing some of them here. So again, the decision we have to make very consciously, but it may be the right decision. And one other observation is that even the ecosystems will want to use predefined data types and predefined units of measurements and maybe other semantic categories that we don't even know about yet. So these could be standardized without standardizing the whole model. So we for instance, already have data types in SDF for describing WGS84 location information. But that's not the only thing that goes into instance information. And if you want to talk about the owner, the operator, or other categories, we may need a data type that is a skid glue, for instance, which is one way of talking about the owner. But maybe we need other ways to talk about the owner. So this is really what I would like us to think about. But again, this doesn't stop us from writing up documents with ideas. And I hope I will come back to the instance information document, and we will see the other documents. And yeah, but please keep this in mind. Try this as a categorization of information we may or may not want to standardize. We can also have lucid examples in the documents that serve as, I cannot say models, serve as role models for other organizations to work with. Thank you.
Thanks, Karsten. So next up.
So we need to see. So we remove the control from the
Yeah,
clicker.
done. Yes.
You did that?
Yeah,
Okay.
then we
And
go.
then you stopped sharing and unshare the new one. This is a new, this need to remove from the clicker is weird.
Yeah, the process of going to the clicker
Is easy, but oh, that was not obvious that we had to.
it's still so.
So this is, yeah, I think it's you. Yeah. Yeah. This one? Yes. Okay. And so there we go. Clicker.
Just a sec. Now go.
Yeah, go. Try your clicker. Out of the way so these don't anyone tripping on the ice.
Yeah.
If anyone has any clarifying questions for Carsten, let's take them after this.
Good morning. This is Chong Hong from Atri. This is about the SDF extension for donor affordance information. Thanks for the discussion about the instance information, Carson. This is the version 02. Let me go over what we are trying to do through this draft first. And then there is a couple of things I'd like to discuss today. So at the end. So the main goal of this draft is to introduce a structured way to represent the non-interactive and descriptive metadata within the SDF model without the overloading of further semantics. That's the main goal. So why this is needed? So current the SDF format, the focus on only the affordance, like a property, action, and event. So however, the real world thing often require non-interactive metadata as well, such as the physical dimensions, installation location, manufacturer, and certification information, and contextual descriptor. So that's why we propose to extend the SDF model using the SDF non-affordance class. So this is for static, descriptive, and non-actionable information. Also, it maintains the semantic clarity by separating from interactive affordances. So it enables the tooling support, interoperability, and digital twin consistency. So actually this extension is a lightweight and backward compatible extension to SDF. So it enhances its expressiveness for modeling real world things. So it does not break or require modification of the existing SDF model, and it also fits into the SDF structure without disturbing affordance semantics. And also it allows gradual adoption and coexistence with the legacy tools and models. So there was a question that why we are not using the SDF property. So we have talked about that in the previous meeting as well, but I try to explain it again. So typically, it's possible to model using the SDF property, but when we use it, this approach introduces some confusions. The first one is the user may misinterpret the field as observable or interactive, and developers may implement unnecessary runtime input-output interfaces. And the tools and UIs may treat the static metadata as operational data. So we can use it, but when we separate it from the SDF model, then in a managing aspect, it's much better to keep it. So, and also we propose the runtime message formats. We define the message structures to express the SDF non-affordance data at runtime, which enabling the communication of the static metadata. So there are three types of message: context snapshot and identity manifest, and then the context patch. And the first one, contents snapshot, is to send a complete snapshot of all the SDF non-affordance data for IoT or object. And second one, data manifest transfers the unchanging identity-related metadata. And then context path is to communicate only updated field in non-affordance data. So the current status of this draft is under the working group adoption call. So it is last until the next Monday. And for this update, we have updated the section 3 and 4 mainly. And we have expanded to clarify why we didn't use the SDF property. And then second one, we emphasize the importance of the semantically distinguish the static metadata from the dynamic affordances for robust interoperability. And then we also revised the examples of the optional runtime messages format to support the use of the static metadata in dynamic context. And also we have organized the according to the use cases that we have presented in the draft. This is all about the overview of the draft. And then I have two discussion issues for today. The first one is the name of the new class, like as we currently we are using the SDF non-affordance, but maybe we can change it to the another way because I think the granularity with the property, event, and action with them, I think using the non-affordance is not a proper way. So we thought about it. What about we use SDF context or maybe context info or annotation or manifest? This is kind of uh, cases that we have thought about it. So we would like to hear about your opinion. And let me finish all the slides and then we discuss. Mhm. So the second discussion is about the for instant information draft. I have looked at the other draft. I think we have the same goal, which is we're trying to represent non-affordance information such as location and identity and manufacturer and other static or contextual metadata that is not modeled as property action event. So I think we have the same goal, but just different focus. So what's the difference? So this is my view of the summarize of the difference. So I might be wrong. So uh, let, let me go over. So our draft for non-affordance draft is we focus on the model level structure. And then we focus on the descriptive metadata inside the ISDF models. And the mechanism, we introduced the new class. And also we embedded it in static SDF model. So this is useful for definition of the things and digital twins. And for the other draft, the instance information, uh, this scope of is the runtime instance messages, and they focus this contextual metadata in operational data. And they defines the SDF instance of constructor, proof shot, and proof shot delta, and so on. And they decouple from the model, so which is the message based. And they're useful for representation of the instance state over the time. And I think the next presenter may correct the summary part of the difference. I might be wrong. So this is all I have today. So cheers. When we like to discuss,
Yeah, I was just thinking about whether should we go into conversation now or should we go through the other digital twin? Yeah, okay, thank you.
so after here. Okay, thank you.
There we go. Yeah. It's like a macro or something that does it. Trying to think how to put these slides on the screen. Just share the screen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Hyunjung Lee from H3 in South Korea. Today, I'd like to present our work on semantic diffusion format modeling for digital twin. The burden is 9. This is the status. We started at IETF 118 in Prague, where we introduced SDF extensions for digital twin. During the several ASDF interim meetings, we have added the examples of both location, SDF location to SDF model, requirements, basic architecture, and mapping information attributes of digital twin to SDF qualities. Now in the version 9, we provide the example of relationship modeling and the procedure for digital twin implementation. It is the candidate working group adoption. Table of contents. In this version 9, we have provided the example of relationship modeling and procedure for digital twin implementation in clause 5 and 7, respectively. This is the digital twin modeling within SF thing. Table 1 shows the information attributes. Most of the information attributes are from the digital twin standard ISO 23247 part 3. We newly added the owner as the SF non-affordance to provide the organization or entity responsible for the digital twin or things. This is an example of SF mapping for digital twin. For the static data like identifier, location, and owner, we can describe them with SF non-affordance. And the dynamic data like the status or maintenance schedule can be described using the SF property and SF event respectively. In the previous figure 2, has been slightly modified so that the SF object is within the both number 7. The both number 7 includes the SF non-affordance for the static information and the SF property and event for the dynamic information. The context snapshot is defined in the Dr. Hong's document, and which captures a full metadata status for a digital twin at a point in time. We define the 3 kinds of relationships for SF relations, including the physical, functional, and semantic relationships. For the physical relationships, is the camera number 2 is inside the room number 1, and as the functional relationship is that the camera number 2 is controlled by the person number 3. And the semantic relationships can be defined that person number 4 is similar to person number 3, things like that. This is an example of SF relationship. Using the SF relation, we can know that the light bulb and the thermostat are in the same room using the SF relation. And for example, the physical relationship between the distance of the humans and robots in the factory is very important information for the safety. Using the SF relation, we can make the physical space safer and more intelligent. This is the procedure for digital twin implementation. This is a common procedure. So we define the ASDF procedure for implementation. During the procedure, the first step is very important because there are so many physical assets in the physical world to be digitally twinned. So it costs so many, it needs so many costs and efforts. So we need to identify and select the physical assets in the physical world. And our next step includes to add more examples for various domains, including the energy farm, factory, things like that. And we provide the protocols and data formats to represent and use an SF thing as a digital twin. Thank you for attention and have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
Clarifying questions.
Clarifying questions.
So
Ari, yeah? We have
We're into,
50
we're,
minutes.
we're going to go back to Karsten's slide. No, we're going to have a conversation now. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to try to put a couple of, I'm going to share my screen with a couple of things from the different presentations at the same time that I think is useful, but Ari, you want to lead, go right ahead.
Okay, Argeran, yeah, so Adam, I mean, specifically on this draft, a couple of questions. First of all, I think it has improved a lot, so thanks a lot for working on it. And sorry for not being able to review it much before the actual meeting. One specific question, it's currently set it's on standards track. I guess we discussed earlier, it would be useful to have informational document around this, like how do you use SDF to model digital twins? Is that still your plan to make it informational, or do you think it should be actually standards track document?
That's a good question.
Yesterday we discussed about that with Lorenzo. Then we are planning to develop. We are planning to include the data formats and protocols for that. So it may be the standard track, I think. But how about you? What's your?
I think my knee-jerk reaction would be that like informational document on how you do, for anyone who's kind of, knows about digital twins, wants to learn how to use SDF, would be very good on that, very good document on that level. Then when it goes to more prescriptive things, it's much more harder to do and might be a separate document but then again, I didn't quite yet understand what you meant by these separate protocols. Maybe that's a longer discussion altogether. But I think like a document alone on this, like what you have right now, like, for example, following the ISO recommendations, how that maps to SDF, how you take in your own problem domain, like take the assets and the whole procedure. I think that alone would be very useful as an informative document to publish as an RFC from this group. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend expanding the scope to the protocols unless you think there's like critical need for here. For this document. Okay. So that's kind of maybe the short comment here.
Oh, I have control. I should be able to do that.
I accept the chairs and your opinion on that.
Okay, thanks.
This question of what status to put through each document, I hadn't thought strongly about, but I think that what you're saying, it makes sense. But I also thought we didn't need to decide immediately. But yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, we're all in awe of what we will see in a second. Yeah, I think the important observation is we have this elephant and we are all blind and we are approaching the elephant from different directions and we are describing what we are seeing from our side of the elephant, but it's one elephant. So for instance, the table that was at the end of Jungha's presentation looked like it was presenting the differences between the two documents, but really what it was presenting is that these two documents will contribute a specific perspective on this, and we have to add them together to get something meaningful. So this leads to the procedural comment I wanted to make. We typically adopt a document when we know what we want to do with it. So it's a statement, adoption is a statement from the working group that we want to follow the approach of the specific document. But we are still in the process of actually working out our approach. So adopting any one of these documents is not exactly what we should be doing at this point in time, but we should try to understand what the three documents mean in the terminology of the other two documents, and then come up with a common approach which mostly integrates the columns of this table instead of deciding between the columns of the table, which I think doesn't make sense if you look closely at this table, which would be helped if you could zoom in a little bit. Anyway, I'm done.
Yeah, go ahead. This is an open discussion at this point, so I don't want to impose my view until I've heard yours. So that's why I'm not answering your comment immediately, but
Do you want to go or should I?
don't stand on cue, but obviously we would prefer to you the cue, but don't let that there. Ari, you're in the queue already, so there you go.
Alrighty. Yeah, so I kind of I agree to a very large extent what Karsten was saying, because we're kind of figuring out what are these components. And like one of the reasons for calling SDF non-affordance was to make it clear we don't quite yet know what it should be. That's why we chose a name that should not be the final name. And thanks a lot for the suggestions for it. I think they are all much better than the current name. But I think we're still kind of bit in the process of like figuring what exactly should go there and where should it go. We have made a lot of progress here. That's a good thing. And through the examples, through the digital twin work, through the instance work. So I think we have progressed a lot, but we're still kind of like, okay, where should it go and what should it be the information? I mean, and I think like probably a round of more hashing out examples of different uses of this non-affordance type of information is what we need. And like, and also Jan did actually a lot of good work on that on one of the, I guess it was a 1DM meeting, unfortunately, it was an ASDF meeting. We should somewhere push the information, the mailing list, perhaps a set of examples of like where could the information be and how it could be structured. I think that these kind of things have brought a lot of clarity, what we want there. But I don't think we actually have nailed down, like as Karsten said, like what is the exact direction of this so-called non-affordance information. So yeah, that's kind of maybe the observation here that I have.
Thank you for your comment.
So what I was trying to do, it wouldn't let me share my whole screen. Didn't work. Wouldn't let me share my whole window, but it will let me share a tab. So what I was hoping to do was put this image, this slide, and at the same time, this one on the screen at the same time next to each other, which on my screen it works really well, but I can't seem to share the whole thing. And so what I think this is, you know, they're both trying to model the boat, right? And you can see that there are subtle differences. And I really would like to use our in-person time to bash on the differences. And there's kind of three reasons is for wanting to do it now. One is that I think that we could converge quite quickly. Two, virtual interims are good, but we have 12 time zones of, you know, difficulty, but we're all here in the middle between the time zones, so that's better. If you don't want to stand anymore and you want to chair, but you know, but also you can just take the microphone. All I'm saying is you know, if you're, I want to have the conversation about this, what's going on here, and I don't agree with Karsten about when we adopt documents. I prefer to adopt them to say that the working group cares about this topic and this is a problem we wish to solve, and that if we wait till the documents are perfect, then we're basically we're done. So I prefer to do it earlier. Other working groups have a different preference, but I just wanted to say that's where I am, okay, on this.
Yeah, I wanted to comment as someone who has no idea what an elephant is, right? But you know, kind of reading through the documents, and I kind of see that SDF affordance tries to do two different things, and then the other draft, the instance draft, tries to do one of the two things. I mean, when I look at it, the affordance draft kind of models both. Sorry, the non-affordance draft, yeah, models both like properties that are kind of part of the model. For example, a chair, like this type of chair is red, right? Plus, it also kind of it has the ability to model instance information versus the SDF instance model only does the latter. So should we look at it that way? Like, that, we've got one part of that non-affordance draft that does something specific that I think is a good thing, right? And then the other one has the conflict, and we need to look at how to resolve that.
Thanks, Bart. Maybe one quick clarification. I think you might be mixing the SDF relations draft on your comment, because that's the one that tells about, like, okay, this chair is red or relate to that one. And then I think the non-affordance, sorry, the digital twin draft is using that. So there's actually 3, 4, depending how you count, related drafts. But yeah, but otherwise, I agree with what you said.
My feeling was that we were uncomfortable with the word non-affordance for the reason that Bart just demonstrated, and that we wanted a different word, even if we didn't know what it was yet. Is that true? Or
By the way, of the 3 options, I do like SDF context. I think.
context is your favorite? Okay. And is that this dollar context here?
Yes,
Okay.
but it also is an indicator that maybe the delineation between context and non-context information is not as clear as we thought when we started writing this document. So yeah, it's really hard to describe a negative. So right now we have something that SDF can model nicely. And now we are looking at the bigger frame in which this part already covered by SDF lives. And we find several points in this frame that we want to address. And one thing is there may be information about a device that the device has no idea about and doesn't need to have an idea about. So the SCIM database entry for NIPSI is something that we are not modeling in SDF. It's just living somewhere else. So, but it still needs to be part of this overall picture, if only to say, oh, by the way, that kind of information also exists somewhere. And we have thought about how to interact with it, maybe not at all, or maybe in certain specific ways. So finding a name for this doesn't quite work because we don't know what this is. And before we have mapped out the space not covered by SDF today, it's really hard to give things names. So I don't care calling it non-affordance or whatever.
So what you're saying is that once we understand the architecture, the name will fall out afterwards,
Yes.
and that trying to name it before then just is constraining our thought process.
Naming is fine, but trying to have a common working group view of what the name should be is not yet possible.
Not yet possible.
So each of us will use more names for things. So we have this SDF instance here. And we also have the dollar context because there is something that's worth capturing here. But we cannot fully grasp this yet. So this is a very formative stage of the discussion. And just to make the procedural point, yes, we want to work on this subject. As Ari just mentioned, the SDF relations document also kind of goes in there because it covers the idea of having a link relation, which is very fundamental to the environment into which SDF was designed, but which SDF itself doesn't do yet. And that might actually provide some of the semantic information that we otherwise would have trouble capturing. But I think the important thing is we are looking at the things, the concepts that are outside the circle right now, outside the SDF-based circle, and we should not expect that they all behave the same way. And if we keep that in mind, then we maybe can start categorizing them in 2 or 3 months.
More opinions? Anybody else? No, go ahead, Ari. I want to attract other people to the microphone.
No, everyone else go ahead. I mean, no, I didn't have a strong opinion right now. It's kind of reflecting a bit maybe what on Karsten said. I think like, yeah, getting more experience on what kind of things, how to form is the way to go with clarity. And I was kind of reflecting, okay, why haven't we got there between the last few IETFs? And I think that, I mean, it probably has been because all the cycles have been on the NIPSI work. I mean, for a good reason. So when I think about myself, for example, I had very limited time to think about it because when I had time to go ASDF stuff, I kind of put it on the NIPSI APIs. But now when that is getting much more mature, I think we have opportunity to look more on this work, for example, in the interims, and hopefully also maybe even still during this week. But I guess it's gonna need a bit more whiteboarding, which might be a bit hard on this space because we don't have a whiteboard here. But it might be a quick hallway discussion still towards the.
Well, absolutely. Please use the time we have here if you can.
Yeah.
If scheduling a virtual interim more towards, I guess your morning, their late afternoon, and my middle of the night is fine. If that's helpful, I'll get up in the middle of the night and let Lorenzo run the call.
All right. I mean, if you're happy to do that, that could be very good way making progress. And yeah, but of course.
And even if it's just, even if it's just collaborative document editing, that's what happens, then that's good, right? Because this was workable for NIPSI already. We made progress that way.
Yep.
Is that workable? I mean, I'm not hearing, I'm trying to show these two things because I think it's very visually, at least for me, contrasting these two, well, JSON plus YAML, but they're basically the same in your brain, I hope. There's subtle differences between these two things. And what I want to do is we want to capture the differences that are good, and where we want to figure out where the commonalities that are just syntactic, right? Am I in the right place as you?
I think there might be a bit more differences there than meets the eye on like what actually trying to achieve. As Carl said, more complementary rather than different approach. But that's another discussion. But then getting back to what you were asking,
not A versus B. It may be A and B. We need both. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. And but then getting back to what you actually asked before I came to Mike, would love to hear more opinions because I guess that's the way we could ensure this become a generic mechanism, because that's kind of the original concern I have had on this. Like, are we making too specific mechanism for something? We have managed to generalize it quite nicely already, but are we now at the right spot? But like, what are the kind of use of this kind of information that we should be able to cover with this kind of construct? So whatever we might be missing, now we have catalog and location information and that kind of things, super useful for the digital twin space. Are there other, areas that could have similar needs for quote unquote this kind of information that we should consider here, and then understand what is the kind of container and a structure we want to put it in within the SDF domain?
Yeah, Cosmovan, just this is a model. And actually in the instance information document, we have something that almost looks like this, and contrast it to the instance information, the actual message that we would want to send with the current information or the information that we want to initialize an instance with. So definitely there are differences because one is a model and the other is an instance, but also we need a model so we don't have to repeat the entire universe in the instance.
Someone in the queue?
Hi, I just wanted to jump back to something the previous speaker, I think Ari, is it? Yeah. So you mentioned perhaps there's other examples where this type of modeling information is useful. I wanted to jump in because I think I have an example of this. Again, bear in mind I'm a newcomer here, and everything that I'm saying here should be taken with a grain of salt because it only exists in 2 brand new internet drafts. But there is this sort of idea of modeling data flows for privacy purposes. And I believe that this type of semantic information is actually quite useful for modeling things like one's personal privacy policy as it pertains to data flows. Again, I'm going to throw out some terms here that may be unfamiliar, but there's this idea of contextual integrity theory, which holds that in order to determine whether a data flow is contextually appropriate for a particular user, there's certain elements such as not just the data type, but the source and destination, and perhaps a number of other properties, which it seems can be expressed using this type of modeling that, I think is quite relevant there. Same thing about reasoning between policies that may potentially conflict. So again, take this with a grain of salt. But I think
Is there some further reading that we should do on whether it's other IDs or just other literature?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have two, maybe I can paste them in the chat in just
Please.
a second. But one of them in particular, which I see is relevant here, I referred to this idea of like a type taxonomy, but perhaps ontology is a better term for this. But in any case, this idea is actually quite essential to reason over different classes of properties. So for example, if I was to write a policy that says, I'm not okay with sending any data whatsoever to company X, and then I have a thing that says, well, I'm going to send temperature data to company X, then obviously reasoning about that subtype is necessary to have that relationship, class-subclass relationship. Same thing can be said for the actual entities themselves. So maybe company Y is a sub-entity of company X. And then, of course, things get really interesting when we start talking about the purposes for these data flows. And in Europe, this would be sort of these legally construed purposes for processing. But in other legal jurisdictions, these purposes may be more nebulous, but it can include things like, for example, targeted advertising as a subtype of advertising, right? And you may wish to perhaps impose modalities on those types of processing for certain data types and things of that sort. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Daniel.
Also, I think there are some people remote. We haven't heard from any of them. I just looking, Michael Koster, probably middle of the night for him, didn't join us. But are there anyone else remote that wants a word in? Carson, go ahead.
Just press the hand if you want
press
to
the
get in
hand.
queue. Yeah, nice. So we now have two meanings for the word context. The contextual integrity one and the one we have been using before. And the contextual integrity aspect probably is interesting because it is another one where we won't supply all the data. So what the preferences of individuals are is not something that SDF will describe, but we will have to be able to link to these data in some way. So the SDF relations document and maybe the SDF type link document, those may come in and support this kind of use case. And I would love to hear about formally structured ways to do contextual integrity. So that would be very interesting.
Maybe it shortcuts some of our wording problems by taking words from the other space.
Yeah, Ari Keränen, indeed, thanks a lot. I mean, that was, Daniel, thanks a lot. That was very good input. And I kind of taking this kind of stuff we haven't really thought about and figuring out, do we have the right hooks in the SDF to support that? I mean, like, probably a lot of that information wouldn't be expressed in the SDF itself, but we should have the right identifiers, right place, or to be able to connect to that kind of information. I think that would be super useful. So yeah, if you can share the drafts on the mailing list, I think that would be very useful. Thanks.
From Metri. I just want to clarify that on my slides that I had the summarized to the difference between the two drafts on the non-affordance and the instance information. Well, my intention is not to compete which one is the better way we choose. My intention was we have the same goal. That's the point. And I would like to summarize or harmonize or merge to the better way by the group. That's the point. That's how I would like to discuss what's the difference and so how we can merge or harmonize in a good way. That was my intention, to have the summary of the differences. Thank you.
Shall we go?
Yeah, you weren't, I had muted you.
Yeah, thank you. But thanks actually for the input, so we can actually move to Carsten now, so that we make this discussion happening. Okay.
Instance information.
Okay, so yeah, I quickly went through this slide, which is both giving an overview of what's in the draft, and also has some details of what has changed in the last couple of months. So yeah, we had this discussion. At the hackathon, we tried to bring together the work that we had been doing about instance information with the work that has been done on NIPSI. And we identified the protocol map as another thing that we need to understand better. We know what it does in NIPSI. We are not quite sure that this is a NIPSI specific thing. It seems to be something that is more generally applicable. And yeah, the interesting thing is this is really model related information. Of course, you also need for instance, if you have a Bluetooth device, you don't just need the service ID and the characteristics. You need the MAC address. And the MAC address is instance information. So it all is connected in interesting ways. So one thing we looked
But
at.
the MAC address is something the device knows about itself.
Yes.
It doesn't know that it's read, but it knows its MAC address.
Yes.
So it's subtly different. Okay.
Yeah, it also does know what characteristics it offers. But again, this is model information. We could include this in with every instance, but that's not very helpful. So one thing we also worked on was how would a constructor work? A constructor is a weird kind of interaction where before you do the interaction, the thing that you are interacting with doesn't quite exist. And after the interaction, it does. So it's an initialization process. And if you look closer, then you get all these various stages that we have in RFC 8576, I think, which I think is a pretty good document to talk about lifecycle aspect. So constructor really is something that happens at a particular point in the life cycle. And the interesting thing about construction is that you actually get a new model after that. So because the device now knows more about what it's supposed to do, it may have specific affordances available that weren't available before. The other interesting idea is that of a proof shot. People always ask, well, how do I actually find out about what status a device has? Of course, we have individual affordances that each provide a specific part of the status. But the idea of a proof shot is to have a conventional way to get an overview over that device. So how important that is, whether it's just a management trick or a fundamental element of our architecture, I don't know. But we certainly wanted to make sure that we can make these proof shots. And what you see on the slide, not really see, but can kind of.
You can download the slides and put them on super ultra big.
Yeah, I forgot to convert these to YAML, then it would be almost readable. So we have an instance And so it has this SDF instance keyword, which says, hello, I'm not a model, I'm actually an instance. And it has a model as well, so that these values that are here, for instance, the location value, that actually has a type which is not described in detail here, but yeah, so WGS84 location always has these three coordinates to it. Two are in degrees and one is in meters. This needs to be properly adjusted, that we have really just the instance information in the instance and model information like that you can have this on the model side. But I think the important thing is we always have to think instance and model at the same point in time. So who generates this model? Interesting question. The proof shots, if you want to make several, may be repetitive. So having a form of data mechanism is probably a good idea, and essentially we need some metadata to say which state that data is a data to. Now, I talked about the instantiation, the SDF constructor idea. And so this gives the thing parameters like IP address. There may be interactions during the instantiation, for instance, for exchanging keys. And maybe other information that is produced during the instantiation process. And this all looks a lot like an SDF action if you look at this. So we used to have special keywords for that, but it kind of seemed obvious to just reuse the SDF action. But we probably want to have something that tells us this is a very special action. So it's not something you do all the time during operation of the device. You do it for initialization, commissioning, and so on. So there are tons of open questions on constructors. And of course, one point here is if you actually initialize the device, what are the accompanying off-device activities with that? You probably want to have it in your SCIM database or in your asset management system, and so on. And on the other hand, somebody who wants to act on a constructor needs to be able to identify the constructors and also needs to develop a preference. Which of the constructors are actually the ones that I want to use? Okay, and then we get into protocol bindings and so on. How does a protocol binding work when the thing doesn't have an IP address yet? Yeah, and finally at the end, an SDF action has output data. And I think we need to construct some examples that show useful output data. So this is what I wanted to say about the instance information document. The instance information document is designed to be accompanied by the SDF mapping draft, which is not on the agenda today. At IETF 112, we set the SDF mapping from an SDF model and an SDF mapping, you get a fat SDF model. And we have since found that we actually need to accommodate multiple of these SDF mapping files. So that's not much of a change. But yeah, you can look at this document, which also has had some adjustments based on the instance information.
That's because there's a different mapping for each ecosystem?
Yes.
Okay.
Or because your ecosystem may have a mapping and your asset management system may have a mapping as well. Yeah, so the way this augmentation works is now described in more detail. And it's all very simplistic, so we have to construct examples to see whether it's good enough. And also, we want to be able to understand what provenance such a resolved model has. what mappings are in there. And there should be something like a log in a model, what parts it was constructed from. And one problem is that we don't really have a great way to identify these mapping files yet. So we need to think about namespaces for mapping files, just the URI where you can get the file, or is there maybe something more? Yeah, okay, so this is just a backup slide, so we can ignore that. Yeah, so there's another document you want to read here in this context, because it shows you the ways you can add information to a model, so you don't have to put everything into a single model. I think that's all I wanted to say.
I have a clarifying question. Can you explain the word proof shot? Because I couldn't find it in the dictionary. Oh yeah, so you did the same thing. IXDictionary.com, and I'm like, there's no word
so
that.
Original, of course, it was called snapshot.
Yes, so snapshot is the original word. Okay.
And the problem is the snapshot is not perfect. So when you get information about the current state of a device, you are missing some information. For instance, most actions will have no way to express that they are currently running. So if you have 3 actions running on your device and make a proof shot, you will miss those. And that's why we said proof, in the sense of it's just something you do in your lab, your photography lab, take
Right,
the negative and create a proof.
So that's what you're alluding to, is the proofs that you get from a photo shoot, where you get like they're not the production quality paper, etc. Blah blah blah. But it lets you pick which ones I cared about.
They may be production quality for management.
Right.
They may not be production quality for instance, replicating the device.
Right. Okay.
Arke, question about the constructor thing. I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it. So far, this construction part has been done in ecosystems, like with them, when Bootstrap happens, you get an identifier, you somewhere in your system point that, okay, this identifier at that SDF, and then you're done. I guess the idea now is that you will be able to initiate that kind of process by invoking or interacting with this constructor. Is that the correct mental model?
Yeah, the reason why these constructors are getting more important than previously is that we are now viewing the device from several perspectives at once. Before, we only viewed it as the device. Now we are viewing the device in its relationship with a digital twin, with an asset management system, with a NIPSI gateway,
Okay.
and so on. So you may need to capture at some point what you actually have to initialize for the thing to come up right.
Okay, so you probably still do what you did before, but now you're actually the extra information that may not come from this ecosystem-specific bootstrapping process, for example, like the location and who's in control, would be added through this constructor process. Okay, thanks. Now I think I have a better mental model.
Does everyone else hear the room next door, or just me? Yeah.
Well, this door is very leaky.
It's very porous. Yeah. Talk louder.
Yes.
Thanks, Ori. Bye-bye. He's our AD, so he has to do something. So are we moving on? I think we go to 11. Is that right? Or is it 11:30?
11:30.
11:30.
Because then I want to leave some NIPSI time.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just was worried we were going to.
There is the SDF relation, it's not so important, so we can definitely set it offline.
What's next?
So we go up to 11:30.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure that we're not running out of time. Slide clicker, yes, gone. Slides are gone. So Bart, I think you're up next. Yeah. You set the timer for 3 minutes. Is that what you meant to do? That was what's left.
Rohit and I are going to tag team on this. We have 87 slides, so it's going to take. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. All right, NIPSI update. So we have an agenda. So we're going to cover status, what happened at the hackathon, and then we have some issues that we think require your input, or at least some consensus. I'm not going to go through them now. We have 49 open issues, and about 15 of them are kind of done. So at some point, I'd like to close them, and then we can talk about next steps. All right, status. We've just released draft ASDF NIPSI 10. You can find it at the link there. The changes that we've made are mostly kind of based on what happened during the hackathon. So protocol mapping naming, changing the registration collection naming, different problem types, property read-write with single and multi-values, new content type, some MQTT client empty objects, and some various editorial updates. There's still kind of a lot of open issues, but this kind of solves kind of a lot of the, or we tried to solve the most kind of pressing ones. We wanted to also give you an overview of what happened at the hackathon, and Rohit is going to do that because he did it at the hackathon as well.
Hey everyone. So these are the same slides that we presented at the hackathon, but I'll be going through it a bit quickly. So our table at the hackathon, we sort of worked on these three drafts. So we had the NIPSI and the SDF, and then also the SCIM device model draft. We had sort of two goals for the hackathon. One was to resolve all the issues that we had, and also actually we ended up creating more issues as well for the NIPSI draft based on like the inter-meeting and the discussions that we wanted to have at the hackathon. And we also wanted to interop like the open source and the vendor implementations that we have for the IoT, like the SCIM and NIPSI gateway. So this is kind of like the setup that we had in the hackathon on our table. So we had a BLE device, which is basically just a dev kit that we used. We had a gateway implementation from Ericsson that Lorenzo had done. We had a vendor specific, so Cisco implementation that runs on like a Cisco AP. And then we also had an open source gateway implementation. And these all implement NIPSI and SCIM. And then we also had this control application that works as like a NIPSI and SCIM client. And we basically got it working along with the different implementations that we have. So what did we learn? So most of this I'm not going to go through now because we actually have slides, but this is the same slide that we presented during the hackathon. We actually have it as different points, but mostly we ended up creating a lot of different issues on our NIPSI GitHub. And I think more importantly, what I want to just emphasize is like this: the hackathon has been great for us for making like a lot of progress. We did that last time as well, and this hackathon. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. And finally, yeah, this is just everyone who showed up at the hackathon. I think everyone who was in the hackathon is also here. So I just want to thank everyone for showing up at our table because like all the feedback that we get is actually very, very useful for us. Yeah, okay, so now we're going to go through the sort of the different issues that we need working group consensus also. I'm going to hand it back to Bart.
Yeah, and actually, when we just discussed the previous draft, I would think that like doing a hackathon project on kind of merging those drafts would really, really be helpful. I think that it really worked for us. All right, so what are the things that we need or we wanted to talk to you about today? So like some of the major issues that we either have resolved or still need to resolve. The first one is kind of moving to query parameters and instead of path parameters. So we were previously percent encoding reserved characters, so like slashes and colons and so forth in path. So when we kind of when we used SDF names in paths, we would percent encode those global names or the reserved characters of those global names. We kind of figured out the hard way that there's some server implementations that have problems with that. This is totally fine per RFC 3986. However, there's a lot of server implementations that do not allow that by default to avoid kind of path traversal issues when services are improperly normalizing code. So this happens all the time, and it provides a really significant implementation friction when deploying NIPSI, because instead of just deploying it, you immediately have to have an infosec kind of CISO type conversation, and it's just really difficult. So what we propose is that, and there's an example of a few server implementations there, like Jetty, Tomcat, Apache, and so forth, that have this off by default. So what we propose is that we kind of move the global names to query parameters from path parameters, and this allows NIPSI API to run on all of these servers without any problems with the default settings. It has the additional benefit that we don't really have to percent encode the parameters, so they're actually also a little more readable. So we implemented this in draft 9 already, and we think that we want to make sure that we have consensus on this so we can pretty much close this issue.
I'm trying to understand the difference between the example URL at the top, in the middle, and the bottom. I see the difference in percent encoding, percent 3A, etc. Blah blah blah. That's the colon, right?
Yeah.
But you say you're moving it, leverage query parameters instead of path parameters, and I don't understand that statement in the context of the two things, because they look exactly the same except one's percent.
I think the first example is wrong.
Yeah, that's why I wondered if maybe the first example is.
Yeah, I think they're the same. So
Yeah, the first one is actually a query
So
parameter.
it's supposed to say properties / property name.
No, it used to be properties / and then the URL.
And then
Yeah.
right. So it's the question property name equals is incorrect in the example.
Correct.
It shouldn't be there. Okay,
Correct.
that's what I
It is
thought.
incorrect.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, Cousin Bowman, just a quick comment on this. This is sad, but necessary. So, yeah, you have my agreement.
Unfortunately, I agree with Karsten. Yeah, so when we originally were working on this format, how you name things, and I also was wondering, okay, is it okay to put this in path element? It would be very natural to put the full names in path elements. And then we're like, okay, we checked the RFCs. It seems to be fine. And apparently there's even some use of that. So it was very sad you find this operational issue why it doesn't work. Of course, this issue goes way beyond SDF and IPSI and all of that, because I mean, any RESTful system would like to use URLs in path components will hit the same issue. So of course, I would love to find a more generic solution we could simply apply here. But I do also understand it. Doing that might be much longer, more work than our timelines afford. So probably doing something like this is the right solution. But I would, in parallel, I mean, I see our AD in the line. Awesome. So I'm sure he will have better guidance than I would have on how to actually go about with this long term. But I also as we discussed in the hackathon, is probably the best we have right now.
Potentially some URN encoding for global names for SDF could be also a solution.
Hi, Orestiel speaking as an individual. So I've not been following this enough to give you a better comment than what I'm about to say, but you have to be careful with query parameters because of the ordering of them and all of the other processing details around them. And in a recent OAuth draft, there was actually a lot of challenge around protecting resources that use query parameters to identify them. So I would just be extremely cautious with the use of query parameters and try and avoid them, unless you're absolutely required to have them. And then if you do have them, make sure you cover all of the encoding details around them, any kind of guidance on ordering, all that stuff. That's it.
Yeah, and we'll only have, like, we'll still use path parameters for things like identities and so forth. We'll only use, there'll only ever be one query parameter per API call. Yeah.
We don't actually do reference that example.com/heart rate. That's just the reference to the model. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So stick around, Ori. This is Elliot. So just as this is more of an aside, which is this matter was referred to one of your other working groups.
You're breaking in and out. You need to be closer to your mic.
I'm sorry. I'm trying my best here.
We can hear
this
you.
matter was.
We can hear you when you were leaning forward, but you're rocking back and forth. That's your problem.
No. Well, no. Anyway, my point really here is that there's sort of a bigger issue that's hiding here, not for NIPSI, but for URI processing in general. And 3986 needs I'm sorry, but this is another frigging mess that what working group has to go and address, or we have to take it back. And because right now, right, everybody thinks that the browser people rule the world when it comes to URIs. Well, guess what? Here's a mess. Okay, so I'm not going to try and tell you how to fix the mess. I'm just telling you there is a mess. And I would like, at least for within the area, either the applications area or WIT, that this conversation be, looked at, because it's not like the library people that Bart is looking at, like, it's not like they didn't create these rules out of whole cloth. They actually found security issues, right, that were concerning to them to put in these checks, but it limits the semantics of our RFCs. So the action here is please take a look at the issue in more detail, and I'd like to figure out where to have that discussion, because nobody wanted to pick it up when Karsten raised it elsewhere.
Thanks. Let me just briefly respond on the topic of URIs and URLs. So art and WIT are separate now, separate areas, but URLs and URIs are covering a larger area and influencing standards well outside of the IETF. And so it is important for us to discuss at what point is it appropriate for us to update some of our documents that we've created here and people have built on outside of the IETF, and what working group, the W3C, and many other organizations are the constituencies that could be impacted by any update that we would do to some of those documents. So happy to talk with the WIT ADs about it, but of course, any kind of proposal to make an update to an existing IETF document should be, written as a draft, discussed on the list. And if you are going to update a document like that, you should reach out to the initial authors and have a discussion with them. And happy to facilitate that for any of these sort of fundamental core URI standards. Thanks.
Yeah, this is like, I realize it's a third rail issue, but unfortunately it's here, it's in front of us. Bart's working around it, right? But we should, like, other people are going to run into it just as we did. And Bart's running into it relatively late in the process, like where, people are trying to production code this stuff and they hit these library issues. So I don't know if it's pre-draft point. I think it's post-discussion point. Like, we should probably start discussing. And yeah, if you could help facilitate that, that would be great.
Sure. Let's chat over email. Thanks.
Okay.
Elliot, it sounds like you're almost asking for a BCP on so that other people can avoid the crocodiles.
I'm not sure what I'm asking for yet. I want to have the discussion.
Lessons learned from ASDF, form a new working group.
I don't even want to go that far. I just want to. I just think the discussion should be had as to, and I don't have a good answer yet, right? So, but we ran into this. It's a little bit of a mess, and there are a lot of people who think they own the URI world. Well, what's their answer to this?
Ari Keränen, and also wondering, I mean, there's the whole thing, how to fix this long term, but we must not be the first ones hit this issue. And if anyone knows how it was resolved earlier, I'm sure like all of folks, for example, must have had a similar, because they use URIs to identify things, and it would be very natural to put it in path elements. So maybe there are already some better ways than this, because I really share the concern with query parameters as we discussed in the hackathon, what Ori pointed out. So if we could get away with them, without them, that would be great. But I also, yeah, recognize we do need to make progress here. And we could, of course, come up with SDFs identifier specific encodings, but that's kind of sounds not that good idea, because it's a broader problem.
I'm betting that previous people just had security problems.
That might be the case, yeah. But if anyone, you know, in this wider community knows about potential solutions, it would be great to have a look at them right now. Thanks.
So what I'm also hearing then is I think that you're asking the chairs to compose a high-level problem statement and scatter it to hoping to hear from somebody who has some tracting of it.
No,
No.
I mean, not for me at least, right?
No, I'm just saying
I
it's
think-
a two-paragraph email. Please help us. Do you have experience in this? Has this been solved elsewhere as well?
That's fine, but I think we should really. I would ask that the area director that Ori help coordinate this, to be honest, in terms of how it should be handled, because it's a big issue, and it's not in small bits of code. It's in Tomcat.
Yeah, so I just would like to put one of my chair heads on in the research group, Think to Think research group. We have a document that discusses using REST protocols, both CoAP and HTTP, in the IoT. And we definitely should address this there as a status report, not as a statement of direction. And getting some text that describes this, as I would phrase it, incident, would be really useful.
That would be guidance on RESTful design of Internet Things systems.
Acknowledged.
All right. This is going to be a challenge. The other one we actually, Karsten broached upon, which is protocol mapping. So we did already propose a kind of an SDF protocol map in, I think it was draft 6, I think. And we discussed this at the hackathon. What ended up happening is that the protocol map keyword is kind of a reserved keyword. So it should be, SDF protocol map. So we made that update. But then, we also kind of realized that, protocol mapping could be used for, things like IP or HTTP based, kind of mappings as well, right? So, we were noodling on that a little bit, as like on how would you map, kind of an open API model to a property, an SDF property, for example. This is just some, I'm not saying this is entirely correct, but this is like some proposal here with an SDF protocol map that has an open API protocol mapping with an operational reference to the path, and then a mapping to the actual parameter. So it seems like we can use this not only for non-IP, but also for kind of any other, or something similar, or this or something similar for any other protocol mapping as well. So the question is, we right now have this in the NIPSI draft, right? The question is, does it stay there, and should we change the NIPSI name to because right now it says non-IP control, right? Yeah.
Yeah, on the last question, of course, we can change the name all the time. We no longer can change the acronym because that's, people know what that is. So
Yeah.
if you have to come up with a retronym if you want to change it. The question on the slide, should this be a separate draft? Yes, but then also we have to be cognizant of the velocity in which this work is going on. And we should avoid creating process snacks. So if we can split this out without creating a delay, I would prefer splitting this out. If we don't, well, maybe we will write another document later on that generalizes on this in some way. We probably can manage that too, but I would prefer a separate document.
But the delay, I mean, ultimately it's up to us how fast we move with this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So for instance, we would do a routine that not all working group chairs are aware of. If you split a working group document, you don't do an adoption call because the document already was adopted. So this is the part that can be done very quickly. We just have to make sure the authors on that split out draft actually have in view what this will evolve to.
Mhm.
And I would like to make a final comment. We're talking about terms all the time here, and now we have the term map. This thing is a map, a JSON map object. We call it in JSON, but a map. It's mapping protocols. It is used by the SDF mapping draft. So,
So many versions.
There's lots of mapping.
so let's, yeah, maybe we should do some offline thinking whether we can reduce the number of occurrences of the word map in this or another place, so we are not totally confused all the time.
Yeah, actually, Carsten, you addressed my point. So Ari.
Ari Keränen, yeah, I pretty much agree with all the points with Karsten, except on the naming. I was also wondering the word protocol. Yeah, sorry for going the naming discussions, but for example, what I was thinking here is if I would put OMA live M2M resource and object identifiers here, whether it's a protocol or not is
Yeah.
borderline. We did try to come up during the hackathon like more generic names, maybe didn't quite succeed. I think protocol is close enough for that too, so it's not bad name. But anyone who's very good at generating good names, now would be good time to propose alternatives here that might be better than protocol.
Karsten seems to be very good at.
Yeah, maybe a bit of dialogue with ChatGPT. And yeah, and then also, yeah, separate draft makes sense, and the renaming that is not only non-IP makes sense. So I agree on those points.
Okay. Anybody want to contribute to the second or the separate draft? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, happy to contribute at least reviews. So yeah.
Okay, awesome.
And I'll just add, those who complain about names are therefore obligated to come up with new ones.
All right. Next issue. Oh, sorry. Or are we good? Can I move on? Yeah. So what we also figured out during the hackathon is that we had defined a bunch of, I think at least 15 new HTTP problem types, and the HTTP problem type registry kind of said that it's a registry for common and widely used problem types to promote reuse. Obviously, these are not common and widely used. These are NIPSI specific. So we ended up creating our own kind of NIPSI problem type registry with its own URL, and we kind of removed all the problem types under that registry. Obviously, we still have to request the registry with IANA. So, but the proposal would be is that we'd have our own registry instead of using the generic HTTP problem type registry. All right, and why don't you do a few?
Yeah, so one of the things that came up during the hackathon, so before, when we had the properties in the path, we had two different APIs, one for reading a single property and another for reading multiple. So once we moved to query parameters, they kind of became the same API. So the request and response would always use NIPSI specific format, like where you have this list with a property and a value. This is for like the request for the put API or the response for the get API. This is what it would look like. But one of the things that Ari brought up was to use the media types and the content type and accept headers to represent the actual data that is being written. So that way, if you want to write a set of bytes, we would just do application/octastream, or if you want to write a JSON specific data, then we would just use application JSON and write that value. So this would work for single properties because we could just give this property as a query parameter, and the body would be just the value that needs to be written to the device, and that works really well. So one thing that one change that we came up with in the hackathon was to introduce this new media type, that is application/NIPSI plus JSON, that would represent this NIPSI specific request or response that we have, where we have a list of property and value, and any other media type that you can use for the APIs would work as is, and we would write or read to the device using that particular media type. This is another issue that we actually did not discuss during the hackathon, but one of the things that we did was we made the APIs consistent. Like, for example, registrations and everything, we had to make it plural. So one thing that was left out was this explicit connection management. So today the API is devices/ID/manage connection. So we're just wondering if this is consistent with all the other APIs that we have, because all the other APIs are, /devices/ID/properties or /actions or /events. So yeah, we're just looking at like any suggestions from the working group regarding the naming for this.
Yeah, we were thinking getting rid of manage and just going to devices ID connections.
+1.
Yeah. I know Ari would have an opinion on that.
Good guess, Ari Keränen. Yeah, I think the devices/ID/connections would be natural, kind of thinking about what is the resource you are operating on. The word manage is maybe unnecessary there because you are working on a set of connections that the gateway is holding, and you're doing updates on that. So that would be maybe a natural way to construct the path there.
Go next. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I'll go quickly. This was another thing that came up actually before the hackathon. One of the things that we have missing is that we do not map an SDF model to a device. We just didn't want to do that as part of NIPSI. So one of the things that we had discussed before as well, and that's the proposal here, is we do the mapping as part of SCIM instead. So we all, like NIPSI already uses the devices from SCIM. So the proposal here is that we introduce a new extension for SCIM. That is this SDF extension, where we can say, okay, these are the SDF models that this device would this is what the device would be like an instance of, because that's where we're keeping all this instance information for the device. Like we already have it in SCIM for NIPSI. Like NIPSI itself doesn't maintain any instance information for the devices. Another question we had is, should this be part of the NIPSI draft or a separate SCIM draft?
Seems like a separate draft is kind of like in line with the other decision. So, but we can also we can work on that. It would be a very small draft.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, again, yeah, I think I agree. Separate draft would be the default option here, and this is of course nice. Again, it's a broader thing than just NIPSI, so it seems like a really reusable thing. So it makes sense to have it as a separate, in my opinion. And I guess I mean, the NIPSI draft would not have a hard dependency on this because this is or would it have? That's a question. Like, would the
No.
NIPSI?
No.
Yeah, because this is just
Yeah.
one of the ways you would do
It
it.
would
So
be, yeah, it would be, we could reference it, but it's not, it wouldn't be normative.
exactly, because it's just like if you happen to do scheme, this is where you would do it. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess the only impact then on the NIPSI draft is that like if the gateway knows about the mapping, here are the errors you would do, and here's kind of explaining a bit of pros. Here's the benefit you get if you don't have it. Here's the behavior. Then I think it's good.
Yeah, I think we can skip this because we already went to do this.
I think these are all the issues that we think can be closed, but I suggest we take this up in an interim call. Okay. And then next steps, we'll work on closing more issues. Obviously we want more reviews. You can create your own issues on GitHub. Ari's done a lot of that, so he's very proficient. And then we'll need more interim meetings to discuss. And then what we could also do, we noticed that IETF is moving to Wi-Fi 7 APs by Montreal, and they actually support NIPSI. So we could run actual experiments on the IETF network, potentially do some, and we could do room environmental monitoring, for example, temperature and CO2 and so forth. And so there's things we could propose on the actual IETF network.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, actually, I guess we can conclude here this session. Thanks, Bart and Rohit. So what is left here now? We have maybe a brief discussion about the ASDF relations draft, and how we take it forward. How do we conclude it? Potentially, we might need more authors. Anyone from the audience? Any opinions?
Lorenzo says he's going to have to fall on the sword otherwise and become the author. Petri Lari, I think you said he doesn't have the time to push it forward. Someone else needs to take over it, assuming this is an important document for the working group. I think it is. So what we're also saying in this space, and the final item is we need a number of documents have quite a degenerate set of authors, and it would be better to have more people. So if you want to be an author of an IETF document, and this is a good place to start for there. Or bring your colleagues. Karsten, yeah.
Yes, on the relations document, the main problem with the current version of the document is that it also has this model versus instance confusion. And the next step would be to clean up this confusion based on the state of discussion we have already reached here. It may not be the final thing, but then it will be much easier to see how this fits into the existing documents. Note that there is also the SDF type link thing, which is kind of trying to be the model side of the instance part. I'm not trying to coin terms here.
I don't want Karsten as a lead author in any more documents. It's too much, right?
I think it's an important document. I'm very happy to provide reviews. Unfortunately, a bit cautious on the authorship issue. So if Lorenzo can take it, that would be awesome. Anyone else, please do. But yeah, happy to provide reviews, and I think it's an important component we should get done.
So critical path is that we need, So Lorenzo said he will become a co-author, but I would really like to have, in general, on all the documents, I would like to have some extra people if they're available. Yep, okay. Well, I want to do the scheduling of virtual interims. We have 10 more minutes. So let me share my screen. Share the screen. Yes, I want to share the screen. That one. Okay, so I put this up. I believe, except for Michael Koster, who's not here, who's in the Pacific Coast, and I'm in the East Coast. I think everyone else is in Europe, Eastern Europe, or Korea. Is that, pardon me? You're in California, so it's really early for you too. Yeah, there was a trick where California, 5 p.m. in California is next morning in Korea, but then that puts Europe in the middle of the night. So I don't have a good answer for us then. Pardon me? He loves to get in the middle of it. Yeah. So to me, these are the two desirable spots here. And for me, that puts me at 3 a.m. I think, and for you at midnight. So it's probably just stay up late. It's midnight. That's easier, right, than getting up early. Anyway, so if that makes sense, does that make sense? Does that work for the majority of the people in the room other than Mohit and me? And we're willing to lump it, I guess. Okay. So I've sort of proposed August 27th. Is that sufficiently after, August vacations? It's approximately in a month. We could do it sooner. I don't mind. I'm not going anywhere. I'm rebuilding my deck.
Again, so there's a minor risk with a conflict of 3GPP meeting.
Sorry, is what?
Minor risk with a conflict of 3GPP. And a 3GPP meeting will happen, but some of us may need to attend, which we don't quite know yet. So
you don't quite know when their meeting is?
No, we know when it is, but we don't know if we need to attend. And it's going to.
Oh, you don't know if you need to attend the meeting, but it would conflict with
exactly
one of these two times. Can you suggest a better time or better day?
So the 27th is during that week. So
the whole week.
If I remember correctly, but it's very uncertain at the moment. So maybe picking up another week before or after would be safer.
That day? 20th? Sticking to a Wednesday because that seemed to work, but I don't have any great.
Yeah, and you said 10 o'clock Finnish Helsinki time? Was it?
10 o'clock, 11 o'clock Helsinki. 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock?
10 o'clock would be better.
Is that okay in Korea? The 20th at 4 p.m.? Yeah? Okay. So we'll write that down. And I said 20th, not 27th, but I currently didn't click on the right button. Yeah, we'll put a virtual interim request in for that. Yeah. And my goal would be, and would September the same thing work?
Maybe kind of generic, at least for me, and I think also for Lorenzo, Thursday mornings are generally better than Wednesday. Wednesday seems to start being packed.
You would prefer Thursday?
I mean, this 10 a.m. is okay, but it's going to be like back to back with standing meetings. So,
okay.
I don't know why people start.
You'll be 5 minutes late.
Yeah. So yeah. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Just like but if others prefer Thursday, I'm all game.
Okay, so we're going to put a August and a September virtual interim meeting in, and we're going to ask to meet in Montreal. Yes, we're going to meet in Montreal physically. Yes, yes, okay. Because I think we should plan a little more comprehensive document hackathon as well, right? But I'm hoping that we're going to have primarily working sessions like we did before with GitHub and Nipsey, and dealing with the documents and slides not required. Okay? I don't want people to create slides for no purpose other than I want people to edit documents and have conversations, not slideware. Fair enough? Okay, so the last remaining item, which we already covered again, was that we're looking for, again, I really think we need 3 more active authors that are not Karsten or Ari. Okay. To be able to liaison and to kind of have their finger in 2 documents that are not and going around the tree, right? Like I'm imagining a circle of people where everyone is actually holding hands with 2 people over, so the circle is very secure, right? But there's also a lot of communication across documents. If that makes sense. Ari's looking at me like I don't know. It's not into this kind of holding hands stuff.
I mean, being a Finn,
Okay, well, tell your colleagues, you've always wanted to edit a document, so there you go. Anything else to add before we close? Lorenzo, anything from you?
No.
Any other business?
Any other business? Something to bring up? 5 minutes?
Any beefs about how we ran the meeting? Please come and tell us, because I want to hear. I honestly want to hear. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Have a good day. Enjoy the coffee. Let's do that. Just paste the agenda, right? Working. Work and I don't need it for you. Yeah, I think we're good. Unless you have
Thank you.
unless you have unless you run into newbies that really need one edit document.
What's that? That's the company.
It's the new name for transmute.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not like you
We
been
were.
acquired.
We were. Yeah.
Oh, you were.
Yeah. That's good.
You're buying drinks tonight?
We're on camera here, bud.